importance of finding development money or pre-development money to get the project from an idea phase up to the point where you get to financial close. A lot of people are underestimating the amount of money that is required to get this project from the idea phase to financial close. And we've been very vocal and we've been very honest with our clients to say, listen, this is something that's going to cost anywhere between $1 million to $1.5 million. Then the challenges throughout this phase is obviously where's your crude, because as you said, the clients fall under different categories. You've got producers, you've got tank farm owners, you've got businesses that are looking to expand their business model and get into the modular refinery space. So for producers, you don't have that challenge. The challenge becomes for marketers, for tank farm owners, and for people that want to diversify. Is it the next to impossible solution? Of course not. They can collaborate with producers. There's ways to make sure that the feedstock security from both a quality and quantity perspective is very important. We then move, same thing, staying in the same pre-development phase. We got to make sure that we work with our clients to make sure that the documentation that they're doing, all the way from engineering to DPR or licensing to fundraising, is of international quality. Reality is when we take these documents to AFC, if they are not up to international standards, these projects will not be funded. So these are the sort of challenges that, in our opinion, they're very manageable, and if the client is open to listen to the technical partners, to the fundraising partners, and to the consultants that they hire. When we move forward, it's important, obviously, to be able to be with the right partners, make sure that you're going to be delivering on time, on budget, so as not to run into financial troubles at the later stage. I think the only message here is the sector is amazingly profitable. The process is very transparent from a DPR perspective, from a technical perspective, from an environmental perspective, from a fundraising perspective. I think the process is very clear. All we need to do is just follow it and make sure that we're doing it of international standards so we get the PI.
If there's so much money to be made, you know, to lose $3 million, I'll just salivate you. Oh my God, $40 million from the come on, Pedro, you can't raise this kind of money. Why are you not funding this project? Why are we not just sign up checks and why are we not just sign up checks immediately? Why are we doing the checkbook?
I've been very interested in the sector for a couple of years and decided to dedicate some mind space to a lot of the analysis that Olu and team have put together, which has very excellent work, and has actually very well dimensioned a lot of what we were thinking about, and we decided to spend some time looking at the space and effectively trying to figure out a way to create a funding model for the sector. It wasn't easy, and I think, you know, some of the people in the room, you know, had that experience and had to really work with us to create an international standard best practice approach to financing a sector that isn't well known. And so I'm very happy to speak to what the challenges are, and but at least I can say that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're still working to finalize, but we believe that in one particular case we've been able to address several of the issues. But I think if we speak to what the constraints are, I think you can put it into a few dimensions. One is the size and the amount of resources, development resources, intellectual capital, legwork that has to go into developing a small project. I think we all say the amount of energy that goes into developing a $500 million project is the same that goes into developing a $40 million project. And the same with the amount of resources it takes to study and close that same transaction. And this even links to the amount of developer capital. I think we'd agree that the proportion of developer capital that goes into a $40 million project will be much greater, because the same EIA you have to fund is the same technical study that you have to fund. And so there has to be a willingness to take on a pretty hefty developer cost for a project that's relatively small. But on the flip side, this is a project that generates very rich margins and has very high ROI. And I think that's something that we also need to think about in Nigeria, is these very high quality projects that are small, but take quite a bit of developer capital to finance. So I think that's a big thing. The second thing is that you don't have very obvious large-scale aggregations of modular refineries as Olu presented, this 10,000 barrel refinery case in many parts of the world. So you hear, we don't have an obvious case to copy, and you know in Nigeria, we like to copy. Yes. We like to copy. So, you know, you see modular refineries in various parts of the world, standalone. You know, you hear of modular refineries in Russia, in Indonesia, and different places like that. But do we have this exact case that we can replicate and copy? The model for it isn't as obvious because there are very few places in the world that have this unique advantage that Nigeria has. The unique advantage where we have proximity to source and proximity to market, such that you can actually capture all the value of the crude that would normally have to be produced and transported and sold at the refinery, and then capture all the margins again to transport the end product back to the consumer. By virtue of having this Niger Delta onshore production capability, you can actually capture that entire margin, which potentially isn't even reflected in some of the numbers that Olu showed, right? So, you know, it's a very unique position for Nigeria to be in, but it's not something you see readily all over the world. So you have to be able to go into those numbers and make a case to a financial institution that there's not an obvious ecosystem like this to copy, but it is one that is very credible for Nigeria.
Some of the experts in the industry discussing Nigeria's refining revolution. What are the options before the country? On Thursday, the Ministry of Petroleum Resources says it's moving to the second point on its Big 7 Wins reform agenda regarding modular refineries in Nigeria. That's been discussed with the Junior Minister for Oil, Dr. Emeka Chekwu, doing a podcast. You can find that on their website regarding modular refinery business in Nigeria. When we come back, we're discussing the Labor Day and the markets. How can companies listed on the market help with unemployment and Nigeria's job market? We'll be discussing that next.